Hello, everyone, here in the sanctuary at the Unitarian Church and online. My name is Reverend Rosemary Morrison. My costume today is as John Sproule. And I'm dressed as John Sproule today, and my pronouns are he and him, and I'm the service leader today. And I want to note I worked on this service early with a very talented colleague, Gordon Ritchie, and much of his thought and ideas are in this service. So I don't know if Gordon's online, but certainly we wish him all the best. And also many people who assisted: Suzanne Rattan, Doug Eastwell, Carrie Day, our guest pianist, Mike Keish, John Pater, Declan Kiley, Zoe Larson, Lynn Wolfe, Audrey Brooks, and Ian McMillan, and Erica Devine, who's done a wonderful job in creating a Samhain altar, which we'll use during our candles of connection. And before we begin our prelude, we just have one announcement which was requested, which is Susan Rattan.
Yes, this is an announcement on behalf of the board. We had a discussion at our last meeting about how we need to raise our profile. And one of the things is wearing these things, the name identifiers, but the other thing is a little work of art that I created this past week is on the back of the sanctuary, surrounded by the paintings that Gordon Ritchie puts up there. And it will show you pictures and names of all the board members if you have time to have a look, and we'd appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Susan. On behalf of all of us, to you and to all the board members. We begin now with an appropriate prelude, I think, and appropriate to the season. So if you can just sit back and we can maybe dim the lights and the prelude can begin. Spooky opening. Let us begin. First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone new and old and young and frequent, but to the Unitarian Church of Edmonton. The Unitarian Universalist faith is a creedless community dedicated to free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace a pluralistic philosophy, opening our hearts and minds to diverse ideas, feelings, and expressions of our world community. We're about to enter a sacred time, and we're about to make this time and place sacred by our presence and intention. So please turn off or silence your phones. And as you do so, invite us to turn down the volume on all our fears, to remove our masks, and to loosen the armor around our hearts. Breathe. Just one, to inhale, exhale. Let go of the expectations placed on you by others and those you were taught to place on yourself. Let go of the thing you said the other day. Let go of the thing you dread next week. Be here in this moment and breathe here. We respectively acknowledge that we're located on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional gathering place for diverse Indigenous peoples, including the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Ojibwa, Saulteaux, Anishinaabe, Inuit, and many others whose histories, languages, and cultures continue to influence our vibrant community. We're glad to have you with us here this morning in the sanctuary and online. We hope you find something in the service today that nourishes your spirit and helps you find and keep your balance. Whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, however you identify, you are welcome here. And given the season, I'd like to say, no matter who you are or what you are welcome here. Let's be clear here, we welcome goblins and ghouls, saints and sinners, and there's a number of you in the audience, angels and devils, zombies and werewolves, vampires and witches. We welcome princesses and paupers, princesses and farmhands, aliens and astronauts, robots and cyborgs, firefighters and police officers, nurses and doctors, cowboys, cowgirls, cowfolk of all varieties. We welcome Superman, Wonder Woman, Black Panther, Batman, Spider-Man, Black Widow, and Thor. Indeed, we welcome both superheroes and the superstars that are in this room today. In short, we welcome people, monsters, and all other manner of creatures, even Unitarians. Here we welcome you and all of who and what you are. And as our tradition, we begin the service with lighting of the chalice. And I would ask Coralie Cairns to light the chalice as I read these words by Andrea Hawkins-Kampar. Gather we now unto this space, this time when the wheel turns and the veil shatters. Gather we now to remember, to grieve, to prophesy, to complete our harvests before the long dark comes. Gather we now to tell the old stories and sing the old songs, to be what we have always been, the voice of our people eternal. Gather we now to celebrate that which was, that which is, and that which will be. Gather we now as we have always done, united by story and bound by love. But given the season, I think now that we have a lit chalice, we should perhaps put the flame to good use and perhaps put a cauldron on it, which you can see by the chalice. And I'd ask Coralie to provide a cauldron blessing that you may be familiar with.
Double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Fillet of a fenny snake, in the cauldron boil and bake. Eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog. Adder's fork and blind worm's sting. Lizard leg and howlet's wing, for a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth boil and bubble. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Cool it with a baboon's blood, then the charm is firm and good.
Imagine living with her. Thank you. Now, if we can all join in hymn 73 for Chant of the Season. And I'd like to welcome Carrie Day, who's usually over at Westwood and is pitching in today as our pianist, but over to you, Carrie, for the intro. And stand as you're willing and able.
You
Thank you very much, Carrie. And I always think that it's these turn of season kind of thing. This is a time of the year where you think about nature and you think about the outdoors a lot at these turns of the season. And now, as usually often happens in our service, where I, Reverend Rosemary, but now disguised as John Sproule, we often have a story, and there's a perfect one, I think, for those of you who have a fear of the dark. Read by Coralie Cairns, with Carrie providing some background, but it's a story, Who Loves the Dark?
Who Loves the Dark by Sheri Pillabaum. There once was a child who got lost in the woods. As night began to descend, the child became more and more frightened. I'm sure any of us would be frightened too in that situation. But what made this child even more frightened was he had always been afraid of the dark. He was more afraid of the dark than any of his friends or his siblings. He didn't know why he was more afraid than his friends or siblings. He only knew that when the sun went down, he was always very glad to be inside his brightly lit house. When the sun was all the way down and the only light was just a tiny bit of light from the moon and the stars, the child got so frightened, all he could do was sit down and cry, which he did. Soon he heard a voice say, "What's all that racket?" He looked down and saw a mole squinting up at him. "I'm lost in the woods," he said, "and it's dark and I'm afraid." "Well," said the mole, "perhaps you could take your noisy crying farther down the path. I hate to have to come out of my warm, comfortable, dark hole and tell people to be quiet." Then the child heard another voice. "Go on back to your hole, Mr. Mole. I'll take care of this." The child looked up in the direction of this newer voice, where this newer voice seemed to come from, and in the darkness, he could see two glowing eyes looking down at him. Before he could scream, which was his first impulse, there was a flutter of wings, and a creature flew down near him, and he could see it was an owl who said, "Excuse me, Mr. Mole. Excuse him. He hates to come out of his nice dark hole for anything, to be honest." At this, the child burst out crying even more and harder than before, because as frightened as he was of the dark, having non-human animals speak to him was beyond his experience and is a little frightening in itself. "No need for that crying," said the owl. "You just give me your address and I'll guide you home." With that, the child did indeed stop crying, partly out of relief that someone might be able to lead him home, and partly out of curiosity as to how an owl could locate his home with or without his address. But deciding he had little to lose, the child choked back his tears and replied that he would be very grateful to be guided home, and gave the owl his address. Now, I hope everyone here has his or her home address memorized in case an owl ever has to guide you home. So, this strange pair headed off through the dark forest in what the child hoped was truly the direction of his home, when his fear left him just a little. But the child looked around, and though the moonlight was dim, he began to notice his surroundings a bit. At one point, he noticed a kind of flower that he had never seen before, and slowed his pace just a little so he could gaze at it. "That," said the owl, as they continued walking, "was an evening primrose. Did you know that there are some flowers that only bloom at night? There are moonflowers and night gladiolas too, flowers that you would never see if you never went out at night. After a while, the owl said, as if musing to herself, and of course there are animals too who love the night and darkness. Me, for example, I love the dark. In the daytime, the light hurts my eyes, so that's when I go into my tree and sleep. To this, the boy replied, well, I like the daytime. I can see to kick a ball. I like the hot sun on the beach. When the dark isn't scary, it's just boring. Boring, you say, replied the owl, and she clearly had some opinions to express at this point. But just then, there was a fluttering and squeaking all around their heads. It took the child a few seconds to figure out what it was, and he shrieked, "A bat!" And he started flailing his arms to knock the creature away, shrieking the whole time. The shape backed away and hovered just out of reach and said, "Excuse me, that's just my way of saying hello." "Well, hello to you, Mr. Bat. This child was out here lost in the forest, and I'm helping him find his way home. You're not hurt, are you, Mr. Bat?" "Well," said the bat, I probably have a bruise on my backside, but I think I'll live." "But you're a bat," said the child, "a creature of darkness. Aren't you going to try and drink my blood?" "No," said the bat, "but I've been eating lots of yummy insects that would have been biting you if I hadn't been around. Anyway, I couldn't help overhearing what you said about the darkness being boring. If you want to come just a little bit out of your way, I can show you something really exciting." "My parents always told me never to go any place with strangers," said the child. "Al will vouch for me," said the bat. "We've known each other for years and years." Al agreed that Mr. Bat was indeed an upstanding citizen, so the group went off the path and traveled through the deepest forest to what seemed like just like a few minutes. And they came out onto a dark beach. "Here we are," said the bat. The child gazed out at the beach, lit very gently by moonlight, and thought, "Well, this certainly is beautiful, even if it's in the dark, but I wouldn't call it exciting." Just then, there was a movement of sand, like a little bubble of sand popping and rising up. Then there was another little bubble, and then another. It looked almost as if the beach in the area was boiling. Then, out of one of those little bubbles of sand popped a rounded shape. "Looks like we got here just in time," said the bat. As they watched, more and more shadowy shapes came up out of the sand, and soon the child realized what he was seeing. Lots of baby turtles, hundreds climbing out of the sand. This was truly exciting. Once each turtle shape pulled itself up out of the sand and started crawling forward as fast as its little legs could carry it towards the water. "When baby sea turtles hatch," said Owl, in sort of a teacherly voice, "they need to find their way to the water, and they almost always do this at nighttime, because to find water, they need darkness everywhere else, so they can follow the moon and the starlight reflected on the water. Daytime sunlight is too bright and scattered everywhere." "Oh," said the child. As they turned to leave and head back towards the child's home, Owl spoke again, as if thinking aloud to herself. "You know who else loves the darkness, besides the plants and animals? The moon and the stars love the darkness. That's when they can really shine. Oh, they're there in the daytime as well, hidden behind a wall of light. But when that wall goes down with the sun, the stars and the moon reveal their beauty. After what seemed like a very short time, the child and the owl left the forest and walked down the street that the child recognized as his own. He was very happy and relieved, but also a little sad to be saying goodbye to Owl, to whom he gave a very gentle hug and said thank you. He went into his home and, being extremely tired, got ready for bed right away. Before he went to bed, as a matter of habit, he bent down to turn on the nightlight that he always kept glowing through the night to keep the dark at bay. But before his fingers touched the switch of the nightlight, he smiled and pulled his hand away. He got into bed, pulled up the covers, and let the comforting arms of the darkness soothe him to sleep. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And a lovely, very Unitarian story about examining more closely things and people that are strange, and you can kind of find inner beauty and understanding through that. And so thanks, Coralie, that was great. And now here is a hymn that was picked by, Gordon had sent me a note actually, and it's, we have a video and you're free to sing along because the words are there. But the Firemist, having pumpkins, trick-or-treating, and wearing scary costumes are some of the time-honored traditions of Halloween. And I looked up some stuff on Halloween, kind of thing. It was interesting. Halloween's among the oldest traditions in the world as it touches on an essential element of the human condition, the relationship between the living and the dead. And the observance evolved from ancient rituals marking the transition from summer to winter, which we're all experiencing. We hope it'll stay off for a little while longer, but it's coming quickly. Thereby associate it with transformation, which is still a central theme of the holiday. And countries around the world celebrate Halloween type things in one form or another, from Mexico's Day of the Dead to China's Tomb Sweeping Day. And our Halloween holiday has its roots in the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, a pagan religious celebration to welcome the harvest at the end of the summer, when people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off ghosts in the 8th century. Now, Christian groups through the years had routinely attempted to demonize and denigrate the observance, in part by repeating there were some claims that Samhain was a Celtic god of the dead and Halloween was his feast. And it was a bit of an error that came from an 18th century British engineer who did some mistranslation of some documents, which, as you know, happens in religion all the time. And it was a poor understanding of the culture and the language, and has repeatedly been made. But it was interesting, the Catholic Church itself who kind of solidified the tradition, preserving the Samhain tradition in the West by Christianizing it. As you know, often the Christian Church used to have, there was various festivals which came from religions before, and when Christianity spread, they didn't want to go and tell the Romans that Saturnalia around Christmas is off, where they used to have, they just converted it, frankly, and gave it another kind of name and meaning. And so Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as the day to honor the saints, and the Halloween is All Hallows Eve, the day before All Saints Day. And it became known as All Hallows Eve and later became Halloween. And this set the course for a pagan Northern European religious tradition's transformation into a worldwide secular holiday, which has become the most popular and commercially lucrative of the year, second only to Christmas. And Halloween was always very important to me throughout my life and connected me with my ancestors and with the Unitarian Church. I was always proud as a kid to say I was part of the Unitarian Church because it was linked to UNICEF, and we had the little boxes that we would go around and collect kind of pennies, and I was extremely proud of doing that. And my generation, and probably all of you here, could say exactly where Lotta Hitchmanova's office was in 56 Sparks Street in Ottawa. And I don't know how many people have made a pilgrimage when they've been in Ottawa to go find 56 Park Street, which I did because I just wanted to see it. And my mother was in charge of doing the collection in our community area. And so I remember the little Sproule sweatshop of dirty-fingered children rolling coins after Halloween. And I learned how dirty money is. That was one of the things. And we did not get to eat our candy until we put in time rolling coins. And so it was a bit of a sweatshop. I also do remember calling out Halloween apples. I don't know if people do that song. And I just discovered that this was only a Western Canadian phenomenon. It was not done across all of Canada. It was only Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta where we did this sing song. In fact, a guy who wrote for The Simpsons was doing one of the early episodes. He said, let's do a Halloween episode. And with the editing crew, he was saying, let's do Halloween apples. And everybody looked at him, what are you talking about? Because it was a tradition. He had come from Western Canada. And so rather than trick or treat, we had that song. It's a tradition I understand has died out. Also, some other traditions are dying out, and that is in costumes. There are costumes I wore as a young child that kids would not wear today, such as the little white boy dressing up at what I called at the time a Chinaman with makeup for the eyes. And I remember I did it as I loved the section we were taking in school at the time, which was about the history of China. And it is interesting, as an actor, I have mixed feelings about restrictions around people playing different things and playing pretend and stuff. And so I think you need to know the intent and just caution on how we navigate interpretation and blame in this kind of world of presentation. And I just wanted to say, I remember some roles that I had as an actor, which I now cringe about, where I once played an East Indian serial killer, and I dyed my hair black, and I had brown makeup, and I was Charles Sobrage, who was the famous serpent kills. And my partner, Coralie, was a fantastic androgynous Inca prince in Royal Hunt of the Sun with her hair slicked back and brown makeup again. I think there would be questions whether it was appropriate for us to be playing those parts now. And there are clearly issues of cultural appropriation, and we need to keep ongoing discussions, as I think the tone with this church, of a generosity of spirit. The worst costume I remember were frankly some neighborhood kids. You know, the ones who get too old and they shouldn't be Halloweening, frankly. And their voices had already changed. And there were some kids who would come up to they'd carry a ski pole and they would come, I'm a skier. You know, and they would be holding pillowcases. That it was their second round of hauling up candy. But it's Halloween, so you have to do, I guess, what your spirit tells you. And after that clumsy segue, if you could all join me and willing and able to sing, You Gotta Do What the Spirit Says Do.
When the Spirit says do,
Thank you very much. And now we have some more doing to do because it comes time for sharing of our abundance. And I'd ask the ushers to coordinate to take up the collection now. Generosity is one of the principles we live by in this church. And every week we donate 1/2 of the money we receive to a cause that is outside our four walls. Sometimes closely connected though. Many people do make monthly or annual donations. And actually, after mentioning UNICEF, it seems very appropriate we are providing our support this month to the for this day, to the United Nations Office of the Unitarian Universalists. And actually, I'd encourage people to go and look, because I went and looked at the webpage for the United Nations Office, and it's really interesting, I think, to make you feel proud of the broad connections that we have. From involvement in drafting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, to leading the Faith Caucus to establish the International Criminal Court, to overcoming UN apathy about sexual orientation and gender equity issues, the Unitarian Universalist Association Office at the United Nations has this long, long history of providing very strong leadership to that organization and a leader amongst a lot of religious groups at all aspects of human rights at that policy level. And so thanks very much. And you can go and check out the link that is there. And if you could all join us in singing hymn number 402 from You I Receive. Thank you very much. And just continuing just a bit of part 2 of my personal reflections around Halloween. Besides my mom as UNICEF Central, and the Unitarian Church is a proud badge that I would wear every Halloween, I have another reason for Halloween to be so important. It links a bit with the Samhain tradition of honoring ancestors. My father was born on October 31st, so was a Halloween baby. So that day was always special in our house. It's a special event and still provides a connection for all of us to honor and remember him on that day. Dad loved Halloween and would make the kids coming to the door singing Halloween apples, change the song and sing him happy birthday. And even after I left home, I was usually at my parents' for a birthday party often. And over the years, we frequently would be interrupted by kids at the door singing happy birthday, having remembered it from the year before. And a memorable dinner I remember we had when Dad was in hospital for some surgery October in 2016. And we all trooped down to the U of A hospital cafeteria to let him out, and we wheeled him down in a wheelchair to the U of A hospital cafeteria. We all had dinner with Dad, a big group of us. And of course, we all dressed in costume, which was a bit of a kind of a sight there. Coralie had a blonde bombshell wig. I don't remember what I wore, but there was Fred and Wilma Flintstone. And my nephew Connor came to my dad's delight as a Trump supporter with a white t-shirt and a baseball cap with a homemade MAGA sign, a badge on the top. And I miss him and my mother a great deal. And Halloween is the time of year, more than others, where their presence is felt. We now have a time for candles of care and concern. And it's a time where we can remember those past, those living, and any other thoughts that you might have. And there are 2 sets of candles on either side of the sanctuary, as well as a Samhain altar at the back, which Erica has set up for those in our church where that might be a tradition. And in competition, there are oranges and little tobacco packet offerings in bundles on the Samhain altar. But it's time to remember those past, and we'll start in silence and then with some music from Eric Clapton, which I'm taking liberty. Everybody can think about their different people they remember, but it's Eric Clapton's In His Father's Eyes, but reflects a sentiment from any child to any parent or parent figure. And so we'll just start, if people could join whatever altar they want, and we'll start just quietly with the candles, and then we'll have the song come back. So thank you. If I might ask, like one last candle for those that are wishes and thoughts that are unsaid, particularly during these troubled times, and colleagues are Unitarians who are living in countries in conflict right now, and it's a challenging time. We're just going to move into a time of meditation, continuing with the theme of reflecting and remembering. And I'd like everyone to take a moment and take, so we did at the beginning of the circus, take another breath. Just inhale, exhale, and inhale, and exhale. And rest your mind, whether you're just with yourself or perhaps thinking about some of your ancestors you haven't seen for a while, for a period of meditation. And we're going to be accompanied by the remarkable Lorena McKennett with Samhain Night. Thank you so much, everyone. And to rouse us from our individual thoughts and individual breaths, I can just ask we can breathe together in rising as you're willing able to sing hymn 1001, Breaths. Thank you very much. And as we come to the end of our service, I just want to provide an Irish Halloween blessing to you all. At All Hallows Tide, may God keep you safe from goblin and puka and black-hearted stranger, from harm of the water and hurt of the fire, from thorns of the bramble, from all other danger, from will-o'-the-wisp haunting the mire, from stumbles and tumbles and tricksters to vex you, may God, in his mercy, this week protect you. And now just some words for extinguishing the flame. If I could ask Coralie to extinguish the flame as I say these words by Eric Williams. May the firmness of the earth be yours. May the flow of the water be yours. May the freedom of the air be yours. May the fierceness of the fire be yours. May all of the gifts of this life, the above and the below, be with you now and remain with you always. May it be so. Blessed be. And if you could all stand and our traditional linking arms, and we will sing together, Carry the Flame.
There we go.